Okay, so you know how important it is to like keep up with big changes, right? Especially in something as big as like housing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And lately there have been some like pretty major headlines about some things that could actually like really change how we buy and sell homes.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So today on the deep dive, we're going to try to break down what seems like a really big deal. Um, Rocket Companies is making a huge move into real estate in a big way.
It's definitely got everyone talking, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about how buying or selling a house can feel so old-fashioned, like it's
Hmm.
expensive, it takes forever, and you just feel like somebody needs to come in and like totally shake things up.
Right.
Especially, with how much housing costs these days. The idea that you could do it in a way that's like faster and cheaper is going to make people really interested.
Yeah, for sure. And the big news that's got everyone talking
Mm.
is about these huge moves that Rocket Company's making.
Yeah.
They just bought Redfin for $1.75 billion, and Redfin is, a huge name in online real estate listings and brokerage.
Right.
And then there's the even bigger story. Their plan to buy Mr. Cooper, which is a competitor in the mortgage world. And that deal is worth a massive $9.4 billion all in stock.
Exactly. And what we're going to try to do in this deep dive is really understand what these acquisitions could mean for the future of real estate. How are we going to buy and sell houses in the future?
Right.
But more importantly, we want to focus on what this could mean for you, the listener. Are you thinking about buying your first house? Are you thinking about selling your current house? Or are you just kind of keeping an eye on the market?
Yeah, so let's just give a quick overview for people who might not be totally familiar with Rocket Companies. A lot of people know them through Rocket Mortgage. They're like a giant in the mortgage industry, one of the biggest in the U.S. And they've always been about using technology to make mortgages easier.
Yeah.
I remember seeing on their website how they say they can help you save thousands.
Yeah.
And there was even a time when they were approving loans so fast that some people thought it was like too good to be true.
That's right. They really became known for being super efficient in the mortgage world. And then you have Redfin, which I think most people probably know for their website, which is really good for like interactive maps and finding tons of data about houses.
Right.
They've been around since 2004, went public in 2017, and they've made some pretty interesting acquisitions themselves over the years. They bought WalkScore and RentPath, which owns Apartment Guide and Rent.com.
Oh, yeah.
And it's worth remembering that back in 2019, Redfin started doing this thing where in some places buyers could make offers without even needing a buyer's agent.
Which was a pretty big deal at the time. A lot of
Massive.
people saw that as a move to kind of disrupt the traditional way that real estate agents do things.
Yep.
And so when you put these two companies together, it starts to look like what one person we were reading called a narrow vertical platform, which basically means imagine one company that controls almost every part of buying or selling a house.
Right.
Like from finding the house online to getting the mortgage to getting the keys, it's all done through this one company.
That's a really interesting idea, and it leads us to the big question we want to explore today is all of this, with Rocket's acquisitions leading the way, is this consolidation in the industry ultimately a good thing or a bad thing for people like you who are buying or selling houses?
Yeah. So let's start by looking at the potential good stuff.
Okay. Sounds good.
So right off the bat, the most obvious benefit seems to be that it could make the whole process a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had this end-to-end ecosystem, like one of the articles we read called it, where all the different parts of a real estate deal were connected together.
Yeah.
That could mean you have a much easier experience from start to finish.
Imagine going from looking at houses on Redfin to getting pre-approved for a Rocket mortgage, all in the same place online.
Right.
And then picture if title and closing services were built in too. That could really cut down on all the hassle that comes with real estate transactions, which can be really complicated and frustrating.
Yeah, totally. And then there's a big one for a lot of people saving money.
Of course.
Rocket's own website even says that you could save thousands if you buy or sell your house through their platform.
Yeah.
And we saw one estimate that said you could save like $20,000 in fees on a $430,000 house.
Wow.
That's a lot of money for anyone who's trying to buy a house.
For sure. And the combined savings that they're advertising for using their platform for both buying and selling are definitely eye-catching. I think this really speaks to the fact that a lot of people feel like traditional real estate transactions just cost way too much. So if Rocket can actually deliver on these promises, if they can actually save people money by making the process more efficient, that's a huge incentive for people who are buying and selling houses.
Exactly. It goes back to that thing we hear a lot about how people want a less, archaic way of doing things.
Yeah.
They want something that's more convenient, especially when you're dealing with such big financial decisions.
Yeah.
And beyond just a smoother process and saving money, there's also the possibility that you could get a more personalized experience.
Oh, yeah. How so?
So Redfin already has a massive audience. They get like 50 million people visiting their website every month.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
And if you combine that with all the financial data that Rocket has on borrowers, you can see how in the future they could really tailor the experience to your specific needs and your financial situation.
That's a great point. Having all that data and being able to analyze it could lead to better recommendations for houses that you might like.
Right.
More accurate pre-approvals for mortgages and just an overall experience that feels like it's made for you.
Yeah. But it's important that we also look at, the potential downsides and some of the arguments that people have made against these acquisitions.
Definitely we need to look at both sides.
So one of the strongest opinions that we saw came from someone who specializes in antitrust laws. And they basically said that these deals could turn into what they called a kickback machine.
Oh, wow. What does that mean?
The concern is that Rocket might encourage people to use all of their services at every step of the process,
Yeah.
so they can collect fees along the way.
Oh, I see.
Now, it's important to remember that this is just one person's opinion, and Rocket has strongly denied these claims. They've called them uninformed and reckless.
Oh, wow.
They're saying that kickbacks are illegal and that their goal is to actually make buying a house easier and more affordable for everyone.
Okay.
But I think the underlying concern is that there could be conflicts of interest when one company has so much control over all the different parts of the transaction. And that's something for you as a consumer to think about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another big concern that people have brought up is what could happen to real estate agents?
Hmm.
If Rocket's plan for this more integrated platform actually works out, it can really change the role that agents and brokers play in the process.
Right.
One person we read was really worried about the future of the entire real estate industry if this happens.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Real estate agents, they do a lot to help buyers and sellers through what can be a very complicated and emotional process.
Sure.
They know the local market, they can negotiate deals, and they provide personal support, which is really valuable. So the question is, how will this new model, where everything is handled by one company, how will that change the need for traditional real estate agents, and how will those agents adapt to this changing industry?
Yeah, and there's another point that some loan officers brought up. They were saying that while Rocket's technology-driven approach is really efficient for a lot of transactions,
Right.
it might not be the best option for buyers who have more complicated financial situations. People who need more personalized guidance.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it might not be a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So beyond just the potential good and bad stuff for you, let's look at why Rocket Companies is making these moves. Like, what's their bigger strategy here?
From a strategic point of view, these acquisitions definitely seem like a way to really shake up the market.
Right.
One article we read even compared it to how technology has completely changed other industries, like travel and stock investing.
Oh, yeah. I see the comparison.
Rocket seems to be trying to bring that same kind of technology-driven efficiency and integration to the real estate world.
It does feel like they're trying to create a more seamless and potentially cheaper alternative to the way things are done traditionally.
Yeah.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum. We notice that there's a lot of other activity happening in the online real estate world, like Zillow is partnering with Redfin on rentals, and CoStar just bought Homes.com.
Oh, wow.
It seems like we're seeing a trend toward bigger, more comprehensive platforms.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a wave of consolidation is happening in the online real estate space. And for Rocket, the potential benefits are huge.
How so?
Well, they're predicting about $200 million in annual synergies.
Wow.
Which means they think they can save $140 million in operating expenses by combining things and streamlining processes.
Right.
And then another $60 million in extra revenue by integrating their mortgage and title services with Redfin's brokerage transactions.
That's a lot of money. And the Mr. Cooper acquisition seems like it's really about expanding their mortgage servicing business in a big way.
Absolutely. That deal is expected to really increase their loan volume and lower their costs for getting new customers.
Right.
By merging with Mr. Cooper, they're going to become this massive force in mortgage servicing with almost 7 million new customers, which really solidifies their position in the housing market.
And we can't forget about the current state of the housing market. Our sources mentioned that with mortgage rates so high and house prices so high, it's become really tough for a lot of people to buy a house.
Yeah, it's a tough market out there.
So in this environment, Rocket's message about making things more efficient and affordable might be really appealing to people who are trying to buy or sell a house.
Definitely. The market conditions are definitely pushing people to look for solutions that can make buying and selling a house easier and less expensive.
Exactly. And Rocket is making these moves at a time when people might be more open than ever
Hmm.
to trying new ways to navigate the real estate process.
That's true.
So before we wrap up, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors.
Okay, great.
Today's deep dive is brought to you in part by Flowers and Associates, property rentals. They specialize in providing housing solutions for people with special needs.
That's wonderful.
And we also want to acknowledge Robert Flowers, the founder of Flowers and Associates. He's also a published author.
Oh, very cool.
His books include his first one called The Joy of Helping Others, Creating Passive Income Through Special Needs Housing. And you can find that on Amazon.
Excellent.
If you're interested in learning more about their services, or if you want to get in touch with them, you can call them at 901-445-8148, or you can visit their website at flowersandassociatesbooking.com.
Great. So, as we finish up this deep dive into Rocket Company's big plans, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that we could be seeing some major changes in the way we buy and sell houses.
Yeah.
Rocket's acquisitions of Redfin and Mr. Cooper really show that they're moving towards a more integrated, technology-driven model.
For sure.
And the potential benefits are definitely appealing, a smoother process
Yeah.
and the possibility of saving money.
Right. But it's also important to remember the potential downsides, like
Yeah.
what could happen to real estate agents and, what could be the unintended consequences of having so much power concentrated in one company.
Yeah, definitely. And while Rocket says those concerns about a kickback machine are unfounded, it's still something to keep an eye on when one company controls so many parts of the transaction.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, these developments are something that anyone who's even remotely interested in the housing market should be aware of, whether you're planning to buy or sell right now or just thinking about the future.
I agree. And this leads to a really important question. How is technology going to continue to change the way we buy and sell houses?
Right.
What's the role of traditional real estate professionals going to be in this new world?
Yeah.
And maybe most importantly for you as a listener, what does value really mean when you're buying or selling a house?
Those are great questions to think about. And if you want to explore this further, we encourage you to do some of your own research on Rocket Company's Redfin and Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
Check out some news articles, read some industry analysis, and form your own opinions about these big changes that are happening.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this has given you some valuable information and context about these potentially groundbreaking changes in the real estate market.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
See ya.